This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 328, the April 20th, 2018 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker, playing a little hurt today. Nothing major. I think all the travel lately and having the little germ bomb of a 5-year-old around have caught up with me a bit. A little bit of a cold, as you might be able to hear, and a little bit of a temperature, but nothing that will keep me from my appointed rounds. And joining me on those rounds, as he so often does, back in Las Vegas, Lexington, America, Jonathan Kinchin, JK, the People's Champ. How are you?
What's going on? Yeah, there's a bingo square for Muggs Barks, but there could potentially be a bingo square today given for. We'll give you a freebie today if we get an interruption from. There's a long list. Here we go. We've got Austin, who's Netflixing at the moment. The Prince of Keeneland. The Prince of Keeneland's dog, Ryder. He might get excited about something. We also have a Pipes at the Gates of Dawn could possibly swoop in for a
unscheduled guest appearance from the Pipes at the Gates of Dawn.
Absolutely, and a host
Sultan
of
of Schenectady.
Yeah, a host of other potential situations. I could have locked myself in a room, but I decided to go slap dab in the middle of the kitchen. A little bit more exciting.
Sounds like it's quite a flop house. You've turned the Prince's Castle into a flop house this weekend, JK. I like it. I like it a lot. Abbreviated show this week, but in a sense, added content this week. At 11 o'clock, for those of you listening live, we're going to run the special William Knack tribute that we worked on this week. Special thanks to producers Craig and AJ for putting in a lot of extra work on that. Got some great guests coming up. But we wanted to do a little bit of a look ahead to some fun weekend races and answer a couple of questions if we have time. I don't know how long these races are going to take, JK. I say we just start there and we just see what happens. And if there's time to get to a bunch of questions, we'll get to a bunch of questions. Why don't we go east to west, starting off with this listed stake at Aqueduct. I'm pulling it up now. I think it goes as the 8th race on Saturday. What did you come up with here?
Yeah, no, I actually forgot that it's the 9th, I think. You're talking about the New York Stallion
Right, the Stallion Series race. Yeah, I thought it was your idea to talk about this race, and then you forgot. Well, I can go first.
Well, you confused me. No, you confused me when you said the 8th. I thought I looked at the wrong race, and then I noticed that the 8th wasn't
No. I just, mistake jar, ching. I'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. What did you like in the Stallion Series race in New York?
Yeah, I know that it's not too much of a layoff, but I thought that Rudy in the on the outside Orchard Party was live in there.
Not too much of a layoff. The horse ran 3 days ago. Is she even going to run?
Oh, wait a second.
You're looking at a different PP that doesn't have the fact that she ran 3 days ago in it, but she still may run back.
Oh, that is problematic.
Yeah,
I am looking at it. Yeah, you're right. I did.
But
so then you're probably right. She won't run back then.
Well, you never know. I mean, Rudy has done this type of thing, and it's from the Dutrow school, from which he is a member. She's sharp. She ran that 75 speed figure on the Beyer scale 3 days ago and comes back and is a contender. But I was going to attempt to there were just a couple of little angles on horses at prices in here that I was going to maybe try to take a shot with. One of them, as Mike Beer pointed out in his analysis in Daily Racing Form, I always love to look at the races and then go ahead and see what Mike has to say when I'm betting New York. And he pointed out that We Gets the Monies, the number one, was racing on a bad, it was an inside track and was wide, was against the track last time, essentially. And that gave me a little bit of a reason to maybe take a shot there. And then I thought that the number 7, our Supernova, was a little bit interesting. It didn't look like the fastest pace in the world or anything last time, but that was a race where our Supernova made a move to the lead early in a race that ended up going from further behind. And sometimes these horses are like what you might call de facto flow upgrades, or the old Andy Beyer trip angle, the move into a hot pace. It wasn't like some super hot pace. I get it, but I was just thinking for a horse at 8-1, I don't know that I want to. If Orchid Party does run, it just seemed to me like there may be a couple of plausible alternatives at square prices. Did you have another way to potentially go in here, JK?
Yeah, I thought the rail was interesting too. I was kind of between two other horses outside of the Rudy, who likely, I mean, couldn't come back that quick, but the presence of Manny, who rides for Englehart quite a bit, showing up on this other horse, Baby Boss, was a little bit of a deterrent. Not, we talked about that recently on the show, that you can't always look into that. There could be a commitment situation or some indecisiveness. But I thought My Roxy Girl was interesting. That last race was pretty fast paced. Took back into that spot, finished well enough going 6.5, which we've talked about. When you look at a lot of these sprint races, a lot of these horses are running at 6, and that little hidden difference between the 6 and the 6.5, I thought My Roxy Girl was interesting. And it's also important to note, I believe this is the last leg of one of those cross-country pick 4s that Aqueduct does, so make sure you take a look at it. I'm not exactly sure which one it starts in. They usually try to hook up with Keeneland on those, but I'm not 100% sure, but make sure you check with wherever you bet, DRF bets or whatever, and see if you can find that wager. It's always good to support those.
Just to explain, you were saying that you were thinking it was a potential negative that Franco doesn't show back up on number 1, We Gets the Monies, and instead shows up elsewhere in the race on Baby Boss, that you were seeing that as a possible negative on the first filly that I mentioned?
Potential. It's just one of those deals. Like, I think when there's sometimes like a close tie between a decision I'm trying to make, if I can find one thing that can lead me to pick one over the other, then I will, it's something small like that can be the thing that moves the needle.
All right. If you want to look up the details at some point while I'm yapping of what that, since you mentioned that cross-country pick 4, if you want to give the listeners the details on it, probably wouldn't be a bad idea if you can find it. I don't quite know where to look. But I do know I want to talk about the Elkhorn. Not sure if that's involved or not as we move towards where you're going to be. What are your plans? Are you with everybody in tow? Is it going to be time at the track this weekend, or is it going to be other Lexington tourist things for you?
Yeah, no, I got a cool little plan. We're going to head over today. I'm doing I'm like the handicapper of the day for the TAA.
Oh, I forgot about that. Did you see my cheeky joke I made on Twitter about that?
No, I didn't see it. Were you being mean?
Oh, no, I was taking the mickey out of myself. It was somebody said, I guess the guest handicappers at Keeneland have been doing really well the last few days. And somebody said, like, JK, you better have your A game if you're going to do this. They've been doing so well. And I replied, just tell him it's a head-to-head against me. He'll do just fine.
That's true. I woke up this morning. I kept saying head-to-head against Pete, head-to-head against Pete, head-to-head against Pete. Yeah, I put together a pick 4 ticket, and I'm going to be on the simulcast show
Awesome.
the seventh race. So I don't know if Austin might make his first TV appearance. We'll see. We'll see.
Cool.
Unless there's a good childcare option in the green room, he's going to be on TV with me.
You're not going to make Misty watch your child, are you? That would be. I think that would represent a new level.
Absolutely. And then also the rest of the plan is, I think you'll be excited to hear this. I think that Sean Borman and his little girl and I and Austin are going to hit a little Josie's tomorrow morning, and then head out to Windstar to see our friend Sean Tugel and let Austin get a picture with a one-turn horse.
I love it. I recently did the trip out there. Absolutely fabulous. Folks interested, horse country is a great way to book your tours at various farms in the area. For me, I said it before, but it bears repeating. It's just nothing gets me in the right frame of mind of why I love racing than going and visiting the farms and seeing the horses, and it's inspiring and fun, and I can't recommend it enough. And Windstar, I mean, sort of, like, it's not in terms of the venerability, but in terms of the class of the operation. And I say this as a Mets fan. It's sort of like you get kind of a Yankee Stadium vibe. They're doing everything they can to do right by the equines in their care, and it's absolutely, you guys are going to have a great time. Have you done that one before?
Yeah, I've done Windstar. I've done Windstar, and it is great. It's when you walk into there where the horses, where they bring the stallions out to show you. It's like that kind of big dome-looking, all wooden structure. And when you walk in, they're playing Tisnow's, his Breeders' Cup Classic with one of my favorite Tom Durkin calls. It's a really cool situation. So I'm looking forward to letting Austin see some of those big horses in person, and then to jump back before we forget. The cross-country wager is with Charlestown. It starts in Charlestown, race 10, the Dance with Bristol Stakes. Then it goes to Aqueduct to a New York bred allowance, back to Charlestown for the Charlestown Classic, and then back to Aqueduct for the race that we just covered.
Those of you in the Lexington area, if you have an opportunity, you'd have to be listening live or listening right when this pod goes up. But if you can get, while JK's on the simulcast feed, if you can heckle or, put the devil horns on him from behind or something, I'll owe you forever. No, don't do that. That would be a bad move. But anyway, let's talk about this Elkhorn JK. Really interesting race. It looked to me like that there were a bunch of plausible ways you could go, 3 or 4 who stood out above the rest. Who did you come up with?
Yeah, I mean, my eyes always being the pace guy, the speed, loose on the lead guy that I am. My eyes hop to One Go All Go and the 2 races that he had down at Gulfstream. But I think that the Keeneland turf course is probably pretty self-explanatory, but it's not nearly the highway that it is down at Gulfstream in Holland.
The Durf? The Durf, JK?
Yeah. So it kind of got me off of him a little bit. I will use, just because I think that in any turf race going that long, a horse that has tactical speed is always going to be dangerous and could be one that could make some noise. But I know it's short in a big open field, but I'm taking It's in the Post. I remember I think we were actually here last year when the horse shipped
we were.
in.
It was the contest weekend, I think.
Yeah, shipped in, and I'll never forget. It was a great kind of weird handicapping moment. And I wasn't the one who found it. Someone else was. I can't remember who it was, but It's in the Post showed up here last year to run after there had kind of been some weather. The turf was obviously going to have some cut in it. Had run so well in Southern California and showed up here when there was a 1.5 mile turf stake. I don't know if it was the San Juan Capistrano or one of those in that series was happening on the exact same weekend at Santa Anita, but they decided to put him on a plane. I think the soft ground, the cut in the ground only makes him better. And so It's in the Post for me has been extremely tough going these really long distances.
I hate to agree, but I agree completely. I just think he's going to get a great trip. Stalking the outside, I don't think is going to be a problem because I think he's tactical enough to just get into a position of stalking One Go All Go. And I think when the real running begins, he's going to have the finish to just dust him. A couple other horses to maybe throw in underneath. Going to be at the lower end of the odds spectrum, but I think I feel pretty good about the exact of keying off of It's in the Post and then playing Oscar nominated and call provision. And was there one other I wanted to throw in here who made a ton of sense? Yeah, the horse on the outside was going to maybe use for a penny too. Hayabusa 1. Not very creative, low end of the odds spectrum, but I feel real good about It's in the Post and keying with the other apparently best horses in the race.
Yeah, I thought the Arnaud Delacour was kind of interesting. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. I thought he made a little bit of sense there. So he might be one to consider as well.
Let me take a look at that horse again really quickly. I'm not sure where they're going with this. Canisar, maybe? Is that the one you were talking about?
Yes. That's the one.
Coming out of the famous Sycamore.
And another great thing to do is check out the DRF workout report. That last work was at Keeneland on the turf. Often with these turf horses, we see those workouts happening on the dirt, and you can't really bring a lot to the surface with those situations. But when they actually work their last time on the turf, it can sometimes lead you in a pretty honest direction. I actually got a text from our friend Marshall Graham this morning just to give us a heads up in case we wanted to get cute that 10 Strike Racing's Dot Matrix will not be running. He's going to scratch.
Okay. The homebred who won at Saratoga sort of famously, the horse I didn't fight hard enough to throw in. I don't blame you on that one. That one was all on me, and we were happy for Marshall. Anyway, it must be a great feeling to get one of your homebreds to win at a place like Saratoga. That's got to be one of the reasons you become an owner from an emotional standpoint. Anyway, let's move out west, JK, and we got a couple of stakes races. I wish I had something clever for you in the Cone of Gold. I was just sort of gonna punt and go with who I thought was the best horse, which was number 5, Ransom the Moon, who's apparently recovered from the abscess that caused him to miss a start earlier in the year, and apparently, based on the workout tab, no inside information, but apparently working very well for the return. But this is not a strong opinion. I didn't have a lot here.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, look, I don't want to try to dodge this one because I really do have a strong opinion. But my opinion is that I don't know. And what I mean by that is Bobby Abu Dhabi projects to be loose and ran really well last time. However, it's what trip am I going to get from Bobby Abu Dhabi and Victor Espinoza? Is it going to be that kind of invite the closers into the race loose on the lead, or that really kind of stick it to him and open him up by 3? And I really don't know which one it is. If he does it, he sticks it to him, opens him up by 3, he wins. If he kind of, people that know me really well know the word I'm looking for, blanking around, if he's jacking around and invites Ransom the Moon into the race to then turn it into a sprint for home in from the 8th pole, then Ransom the Moon will beat him. I don't think Calculator wants to really do this anymore. He hasn't really shown that he does. Obviously, he ran one down the hill, a couple back, but just not the same horse he was in the earlier parts of his career. So I think that Bobby Abu Dhabi is probably the most likely winner, especially considering the circumstances, and Ransom the Moon probably having bigger things that he's looking to accomplish down the line.
I like that thought. I'd certainly use. Do you think Calculator's presence, regardless of whether or not Calculator is the same horse, and I agree with you that he probably is not, do you think his presence in the race makes it more likely that Espinoza will be aggressive, sort of with team tactics in mind, knowing that Miller's probably not going to get mad at him if he sets it up? He could, in his mind anyway, be setting it up for Calculator, potentially. Does that factor into your analysis at all?
Well, I think that a couple things. No, Calculator's involvement doesn't, and here's why. If you look at Kent DeSormo, he's not necessarily a speed guy. Don't get me wrong. He'll find himself on the front end when he needs to be, and also when he doesn't need to be. Asking me that a couple weeks ago. But Kent is not one that's going to hustle a horse away from there. And if you look at Calculator's last 21 starts, one time in the first call was he on the lead, and that was down the hill on the grass. So I don't expect that in this spot that he'll find himself there, especially being drawn outside with no real need to do so.
No, that's what I was saying. You would think if you're Team Miller thinking about team tactics, I would think you'd say Abu Dhabi, speed, Calculator, come from off the pace. I was thinking that might make Espinoza feel better about throwing it down a little bit or being aggressive on the front like you want him to be, as opposed to ticky-tacking around on a soft lead.
A phenomenal point that could help me lean on Bobby Abu Dhabi and Victor Espinoza doing what I think would be best for them in this spot.
You actually think you'll play this race? I was thinking it was not necessarily I think it's obviously a watch race, but I wasn't thinking it was necessarily a play race.
Only if I had another single in the early part of the pick 5. Otherwise, I just don't think there's any value there. Because I feel like I would end up
in contests as a short field. Do you think? Or
no, we won't see that in anything unless you're playing like a all Santa Anita situation. This won't be in contest.
Right, so you don't have to worry about it too much. All right, so more to come there. Speaking of contests, I'm sure folks noticed we had the addition of low buy-in feeders for the World Horse Player Tour Santa Anita contest that, of course, JK and I are involved in. You can now start your journey for as little as $7. We did have a question from a friend of ours, a well-meaning friend of ours, doing all the math on the takeout when you start when you start a feeder process and you go through a few rounds to get your ultimate goal, you are essentially going to be paying more takeout along the way. But I thought it was important to, while acknowledging that point was true, and if you're strictly looking for value, you're better off starting later in the process, maybe buying into the the direct qualifier. But for those of our listeners and contest fans for whom putting up 458 for the direct qualifier isn't an option, it seemed to me that this was a good way to get some action and, potentially start your path to something special. And you had a pretty good analogy about it, JK, that I thought was worth sharing.
Yeah, and I don't know why the heck I don't know which one. I had two analogies. I'm going with the one that's a little bit funnier. I don't know why I said Gucci jacket, because I don't even have a Gucci jacket. I've never bought one. I never will buy a Gucci jacket. But my analogy was that there's $1,000 Gucci jacket, which I think they're probably more than that, and it's on sale for $500. That's a great deal. But if you decide to buy it with a credit card and pay the minimum balance on a 25% interest credit card, it suddenly is not a great deal anymore. And that's how I look at these contests. Is you can buy into the World Horse Players Tour for $5,000 in a no takeout contest. Obviously, there's takeout in the pari-mutuel pools, but there's no takeout in terms of the contest. Or you can play in the $458 feeder that has around right under 10%. It gets a little bit funny with breakage, so don't. But anyways, if it's an even situation where there's giving away 12 seats, there's 12 people in it, it's 9.02% takeout. But if you want to play for 54, the takeout goes higher, and for 7 it goes higher. So my whole point is that if there's a cost for not having to put up as much money to get in. So there's a service being provided by DRF tournaments to allow someone who has a smaller bankroll to have a chance to get into the $5,000 event, in which they might not be able to do so. So therefore, the takeout is a little bit higher, and then also the takeout is from a dollar to dollar perspective is less significant when we're talking about a dollar being the difference between 1% and 10% and 15% versus it being like $40 or $60 the higher level. So I hope that I think I eloquently explained it better in the text message that we had.
Well, I'll tell you what, you got the price of the Gucci jacket way off. We're talking a couple dimes at least for the ones that I'm thinking of. But who knows, JK? Maybe someday you'll hit a nice pick six, and we'll get you an embroidered Gucci jacket that you can proudly wear around racetracks all over America. The other point I'd make is simply that, especially at these low price point levels, when you're buying a Gucci jacket on layaway, the way I look at the world. Now, I get it. Like some people, buying something on layaway, sometimes you just need to because it's the only way you can get it. Something frivolous like a Gucci jacket, I feel like buying that on layaway, you're kind of like throwing money down a hole, and I'd rather see you save money and just buy it. Whereas when you participate in a contest, you're getting action. You're getting a day of being stuck into playing on a Wednesday that you might not have played for $7, where maybe you're going to notice something about the way your track is playing, about a certain horse, trip notes, horses to watch, whatever, that can pay dividends down the line. I feel like you're getting more out of it in terms of information, and in terms of experience, in terms of fun, and also with contests, it's different. I would argue that even a couple of points of takeout in the win pool or in any pari-mutuel pool at the windows, very big deal because churn magnifies it. But when you can make one bet for a day, essentially, and play in a $7 contest on a Wednesday, the churn doesn't get magnified. It really, the difference between having a great takeout and the takeout, the fair takeout that's there is literally $1. So anyway, we probably went too far into the weeds on that one, but I thought it was a good point, and I thought it was worth discussing, and I was glad our man brought it up. Let's talk about this other stake race, JK, at Santa Anita. I think I can be a little more clever here in the American, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, this is a tricky one for me. There's a lot of horses in here I love independently, right? But I've always been a huge What Have You fan. I think that Free Rose is talented and can do some damage at times. It hasn't really been in form so far this year. Kinji Storm is one of my favorite horses. I remember when Kinji Storm was sprinting on the dirt back in the day, and I thought the horse was cool, and then got on the turf and started wiring people. I thought that was really fun. It feels like they're going to run a little bit in here. There's a lot of, Kinji Storm's drawn outside. What Have You's drawn inside. It just feels like, and there's some speed in the middle. It feels like they're going to go a little bit. I'm going to pick a horse that I think will be a good price, is a little bit not like the sexiest on paper in Fabosi. And the reason I am is because I know the horse is going to save ground drawn inside. I know the horse, if you look at the last time form race, was kind of fourth, sitting off of some blue fractions with Kinji Storm, was right there kind of with Kinji Storm. So obviously could still be close enough to a horse that if Kinji Storm is going to be loose, would be the horse I would play. I'm going to take a little bit of a flyer here on Fabosi. It's not usually like my normal type where I usually horses I pick are with like conviction that they're going to win. I just think that a lot of things that Fabosi is going to get out of this trip are going to be advantageous, and I think the horse will hit the board, if not win the race, at a good price based on the trip and what I think the other ones are going to do. The horse I really want is Blackjack Cap. He's going to be bet too much. I mean, he's the one that I feel like, second off of a break and is tactical but can still kind of finish. And in his Breeders' Cup Mile, he took back and made one huge run, but he's going to be really overbet. So I would obviously use the horse, but Fabosi is going to be my pick if this race shows up in contest.
I was going to take my general view of the race very similar to yours. A lot of different ways it could go. Wanted to land on something I don't have a ton of conviction is going to win or anything like that. But it just looked like the kind of soft spot where, and by soft, I just mean the contenders are, we're talking about good horses. We're not talking about world beaters. And I have enough questions about them that I wanted to reach also for a double-digit horse. And for me, that horse is going to be number 4, Ritzy AP. Coming out of that Hollywood Derby. It wasn't super fast, but when you look at the time form pace array, I think it's safe to say that he was closer than he wants to be. I think an off-the-pace trip, there's just enough back form. Horse has only had 11 races, could be improving. Blacker has some decent runners coming off these type of layoffs on turf. Positive ROI in that category. I was going to take a shot and see if we couldn't get Ritzy AP in there, but I'd certainly throw in JK's long shot as well. This is Fabosi. This is a race that I do think is worth throwing a few dollars at just because I feel like anything could happen.
No, I agree. It's a fun race to watch too. I mean, I definitely think that there's some interesting things that could happen here. And I think it's very live. The thing could fall apart. It could not go fast. It could go fast. Someone could get loose. A lot of different dynamics. This is if you're working on your thesis for race design, this is a great subject race to take a look at.
All right, let's move on to a listener question. Probably only have time for one, as we got to get out of here in about 3 minutes. This one came from Roger. He was wondering our feelings on a debate he and some of his friends are having. A few horses have won out of the BC Juvenile Turf on synth and dirt. Does turf give any indication of dirt proficiency? Is that a key race that can give you bets in dirt races as well as the turf? Where would you say that would stack up against a real key race like the Kentucky Jockey Club from last fall?
There's a lot going on there. So the question was, does the poly
basically I think the question is, can a key race be something that you use as a positive across surfaces?
Yeah, no, I think so. It just talks about the talent of the group in which a horse's performance took place. Obviously you'll have speed figures. If you have a 90 figure on the poly and the race is a key race, then I think you can feel a little bit more comfortable that 90 will successfully transfer to other surfaces. Now, if it's a poor race and it's a 55 figure on the poly, then you're not going to expect that figure is going to then, that horse is going to then jump up and run a better figure on a different surface. So I think it's definitely something to keep in mind, because at the end of the day, they're animals running in a circle, and we want to know which races are good. And there's a lot of different ways that we do that, whether it's class or figures or race ratings or whatever. And I think that one of the easiest and old school ways, and one of the ways that I originally learned from Steve Davidovitz was, what are the horses behind or in front of that horse doing out of that race? And so I think that it does transfer from surface to surface.
Yeah, I think it can, but it would never supersede breeding. when you see Mendelssohn come from the turf and then, run on synth and then run on dirt as he did in Dubai, that's very different. Some horse that can't stand up on dirt isn't going to run well just because the form of a turf race was good. So it's just sort of one ingredient in the stew. But I agree. I mean, basically what we're looking for when we're looking for horses to bet is horses who are better in ability terms than their raw form, than their paper suggests. And one of the best ways to find sort of a hidden good race is a productive race, a race where horses come back out of it, not just to win races. I mean, that's how Davidowitz originally couched it in betting thoroughbreds, and that's, I think, where we all started with key races. But I think the way we look at it in 2018 is more geared to races where horses come out and most of them or many of them are running significantly better figures as opposed to just looking, a maiden special rate, 2 horses might drop into maiden claimers and win. That doesn't really, and run lower figures than they did in the MSW. That doesn't make me excited to bet those horses going forward. But at the same time, as JK says, if it's a horse who's bred to dirt and coming out of a productive turf race, that is going to make me take a little bit extra notice. I wouldn't call it completely irrelevant, but there are times when it is irrelevant, like I said, if the horse isn't bred to stand up on the other surface. We are about out of time. JK, any closing thought for this abbreviated episode of the DRF Players Podcast?
Derby's upon us. I'm looking forward to repeating the Kinshin Crown. I noticed that Larmy's trying to change the rules on us. Of course, that's what they all try to do. They try to change the rules. If you can't win with the normal rules, you got to change the rules, huh? Jeepers, creepers.
If we had time, we'd go into that, but we're going to put a pin in it, and we'll talk about it. We're going to do the Derby draft on the next show. On Tuesday, Chris Larmy will be here. TV's Matt Bernier will be here. That will be a great one. If you're listening live, stay tuned. Going to be having our William Knack tribute coming up next. Please get a chance to listen to that. I'm pretty happy with how the guests portrayed his writing and life and times, and I encourage everybody to check it out, whether it's live or via podcast. Magic. I want to thank JK, producer Craig, producer AJ. Most of all, I want to thank all of you for listening. Props also, of course, to Travis Stone and Willie Nile for helping us with our open. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. If you're listening live, may you win all your photos.